Welcome. Today we're having a conversation that matters about women and the path to the top. Who's our guest today, Mike?
Stu, today we have Carol Baird Ellan. She's the former chief judge of the provincial court system here in British Columbia, one of only 2 women in the history of the court system to hold that position. So clearly someone who over her more than 20 years in the legal profession achieved at the very highest level. She's now retired, but apparently hasn't had enough. She's also running for Parliament in the next federal election and making sure that women are achieving at the highest levels and have the opportunities to achieve at the highest level in any profession is something that was important to her in her legal work, but now it's something she wants to prioritize as she runs federally.
Right. Well, she pointed out in our conversation that there's a variety or a number of societal issues that are also part of the path to getting to the top, and that's what prompted her to get into politics.
Yeah, that's right. You know, we often hear the metaphor of the glass ceiling historically about gender discrimination in the workplace. Well, there's a recent Harvard Business Review article that said it's probably not the most accurate metaphor anymore, that it's really more what's called a labyrinth of obstacles. And the former chief judge articulates this very well, that it's a variety of obstacles that are in play. Some of it is just good old prejudice that's been around with us for a long, long time. But there are also a lot of other factors at play. Certainly for women, the fact that there's oftentimes significant responsibilities at home, responsibilities and active roles in a variety of groups in the community, as well as then achieving in your professional world. So there's a variety of things that can potentially be obstacles for women that men may not necessarily be dealing with.
Fascinating conversation, and it's one of a series of conversations like this because it's such a complex issue. Let's go to that conversation now. Welcome.
Thank you, Stu.
When you take a look at your career, you made it to a very important position within the legal profession in Canada. Before we get to that, let's rewind a little bit. You grew up in Western Canada?
Vancouver, born and raised.
You go to school?
Public school, yeah.
What role did your parents play in your own ability to envision yourself succeeding?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I was encouraged by my parents from a young age. My father in particular, he had the 2 daughters, twins, my sister and myself, and he encouraged us to not to think of ourselves as girls, but to think of ourselves as people who could do things. And so, you know, at an early age, he'd take us fishing and he'd talk to us about potential careers and things that we could think about going into. That influenced me because I wasn't brought up to think that I had a particular place in a family or in the world, and that helped immensely. And my mother was encouraging, of course, as well. She was, you know, typical, I suppose, from my perspective, unconditional support. And so we were encouraged to flourish.
You go to school, what did you study?
Well, that's an interesting story. I started in music because I'm actually a guitar player, and I thought maybe I would be a guitar teacher or something like that. But I also had this decision early on in high school that I wanted to be a lawyer. So I decided pretty early on in my music career that that wasn't a really good path to being a lawyer as well, and I switched to commerce and took commerce as an undergrad.
So you learned the business of business.
I did, but I only spent 3 years in undergrad. I went into law school early, so I was in a bit of a hurry to get out into the legal world. But I did take business in commerce and did well at that.
Now that you look back over the arc of your career, do you believe that was important, that you had at least a grounding in commerce?
I did. I could have had more. An MBA or something probably would have been more helpful. I didn't have a lot of business acumen when I went into the legal profession. And I think it's important to have that to the extent that you can. A business degree before law school would be a very good thing for people because it's not just about practicing law, it's about knowing how to run a business and how to run a law firm, even if you're one small person in a very large firm. It's important to know the overall logistics of the firm.
So did you start articling in a larger firm when you graduated from school? Was that the path you took?
Yes, basically I did. I started with a large downtown firm in the corporate commercial department, stayed on for a short time with that firm as an associate, and then went into tax law with a medium-sized firm at the time. but all business-oriented practice.
Were you rising at a meteoric rate?
No, not at all, really. In fact, I found, in my experience in private practice, I ran into difficulties, in particular at the tax firm, where I excelled at making clients happy, and also the approval of the senior partner that I worked with, who I viewed as a mentor. I did really well at that, but I was taken to task for not doing enough client development, not seeing kind of the bigger picture of that firm and where they needed to go. And so I had kind of slotted myself in a niche where I did really, really well at the firm in that niche, but not necessarily as partnership material.
Because you didn't go out doing the business development.
Yes. It wasn't something we were mentored to do either. I mean, I was slotted into a niche and basically did what I was asked to do by the person that I worked most closely with and who I admired immensely. And so for me at that point, I was happy just basically pleasing him and doing good, really, really good work and working very hard. But the remainder of the firm and the partners sort of made it clear that I should be branching out and doing client development, but they didn't mentor or model that for me. So I didn't actually know how to do that.
There's a woman in the United States in Rhode Island, Susan Tuno, who has written a book, No Ceilings, No Walls.
Yeah.
And she points out this very fact. She says that women are even unknowingly mentored into kind of the softer side of the business,
Yeah.
but not the business side of the business. And that without it, you don't graduate to those senior positions.
Yeah, and I grew up, despite the fact I was encouraged to be a professional, I grew up as a people pleaser. I'm not sure you can generalize that most women do, but a lot of women do. They seek approval and they want to do a good job for a person who recognizes that, or for a number of people. And so I think I slotted myself a little bit, but again, there wasn't sort of the mentoring, the here's how we do this kind of thing from people who were proficient at it. They just compared me with my male counterpart, who was a good friend of mine, who did naturally go out and have client meetings and lunches and develop it and bring in clients.
In the course of your own career development, did you then get frustrated that you were not viewed as being partner material?
Oh, I did. I was wounded because I wasn't told that before it became a problem. I wasn't told you should go this direction and start doing these things. It just sort of came out of the blue to me. So yes, I was wounded. In fact, I left the firm.
Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook, points out you have to stay present. You have to be there. Yep. The only way that you can close that gap is, or to move to the higher level, is to continue to push and strive and fill in those gaps in your own experience.
Exactly. And so when I explain that decision to people, it's a double-barrel decision too. It wasn't just because I felt I was butting up against something in that firm where I would have had to work immensely harder to change their attitude or their conclusion about me. But I was coming into my childbearing years. And I thought, okay, so can I have children and stay at this firm? Or stay in downtown Vancouver practice, because a lot of the firms are the same. You're expected to basically be kind of an indentured servant, is the way I would describe it. Your life is devoted to the firm. Mm-hmm. So there was that decision as well. I had been at the other large firm, and I knew that you're not encouraged to have an outside family life if you want to be a partner in a downtown firm. And I wanted to have children. My husband and I wanted to have children.
So did you feel the decision to have children put your career path on hold then?
Well, I was extremely fortunate because I moved from that firm to being a prosecutor, and I was in an era where the government in BC was encouraging women to work and to work part-time, and they were facilitating job sharing and things that enabled women to continue working, not lose ground, and also have their families. And I benefited from that. Probably why I had 5 kids.
Yes, you had 5 children.
I had 5 children, yeah.
What role then did your partner, your husband, play in your ability to return back to the workforce and pick up on a career trajectory that saw you rise to, a pretty high level.
Well, and of course, it's essential, I think, for any woman who is going to be able to rise within a industry and have kids, that she has a very supportive, wonderful partner like the one that I was fortunate enough to have, who takes up, I won't call it the slack, but the important work when the mother isn't there, and does the things that need to be done in childcare if there's a business trip or something like that. So my husband was very supportive of my career.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to have asked that question, because you say, well, can't you do it on your own or whatnot? But life is about partnerships, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think work is also about partnerships, and a lot of other things are too, but particularly family life is about partnerships. If you're going to excel the way that I thought was necessary in a career, you're going to need someone there to support you and to be the other half of the family life.
So you return to work full time. You've got 5 children, and you're in a pretty busy sector. You're in law enforcement, in essence. How did you wind up being able to navigate those challenges? Because even though you have a supportive partner, you still have to be present as a parent and in your career.
Right, and I used to talk about balance, busy at work, busy at home kind of thing. I think that's what I said when I was appointed chief judge. But, you do have to compartmentalize your life. You have to organize it, extraordinarily. So when I sat as a judge, before I was chief judge, it was a 4-day sitting schedule. The 5th day was for judgment writing, and I did as much or more judgment writing than anybody on the court, but my judgment writing time was from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m.
That's how you had to schedule your day?
That's how I did it, yeah.
And so it takes extraordinary efforts.
Because I took that 5th out-of-court date to be a mom and go to the field trips and spend the time with the kids, spend the time with my husband, and make sure we also had a balanced family life.
When you look at what you did to be able to rise to the position of judge and then on to chief judge, what are some of the key lessons that you think that you've learned from your experience that you can share with others? Because I know that what you're talking about right now in the legal profession is still going on. It's still what's happening today.
Yeah, and unfortunately my message, in terms of excelling, is it's still about hard work. You have to demonstrate to those who make decisions about advancement that you are a person who will work harder than the other person who might be competing for the position.
Male or female?
Male or female, yes. Yeah, I'm not saying, I won't say there's, a bias against women. It's just that you do need to show yourself to be a hard worker. Some of the time the problem is that you say not present, but also distracted. There's a phone call from the daycare. There's something else that you need to organize that's outside of your business life, and you may not be entirely present. You might be distracted. You might not be seen as available because your child is sick and you have to go home and look after them. Those kinds of things. So I'm upset, I guess, that it hasn't gotten any better, and I don't think it has. One of the main things right now, I think that the problem, that why we're losing ground in terms of the gender gap, is we don't have a national childcare program. So there is that worry. What's happening with my child? Are they in a reliable situation? Or, maybe the babysitter's sick and you can't take your child to daycare, so they come to the office with you. I did that lots of times. So, without a reliable national affordable childcare program, we're not going to see women excel in this country.
So are we talking about at middle management level or as we move into senior management level? Because it's my understanding, you take a look at women who are in the middle management level, it's almost evenly split, 50-50 between men and women. It's going from there to the executive level that all of a sudden there's this huge drop-off.
Yeah, and it's probably a lifestyle issue. That would be my perspective. For decisions I made. I mean, I did take the chief judge position. It was a full-time role. It was a 5-year term, so I could conceive of doing that and not losing ground in the really important thing, which was in my family, missing things that my kids went to or were at. So for 5 years. But to contemplate that being a 20-year career, or in my case, going on to another court and working at that full-time for another 20 years, you lose ground in the lifestyle department. And people are making decisions on that basis, I think, these days. Maybe not just women.
Mm-hmm. When you got to the chief judge position, it becomes intense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was flat.
Like how intense is it?
Well, it's one of those things you don't know until you get there how intense it's going to be. And you think, oh, I could probably do that. And you can. But as the chief before me, or two chiefs before me, who was a bit of a mentor as well, said, you're going to be living out of a suitcase for 5 years. Just get used to the idea. And it was intense. It was more intense, I think, maybe for my term than I expected because of the immediate closure of 24 courthouses in the province by the newly elected BC Liberal government. So there was an immediate media attention and a serious conflict with government right off the bat that I had to spearhead and deal with.
So that becomes around the clock, 24/7.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I got a reputation for a lot of late night emails.
But there's no other way to do it.
No, there is no other way to do it. I mean, it's much like going into politics. I think you have to respond immediately to things that come up. You don't have the luxury of reserving judgment like you would do if you're a sitting judge, right?
So when we take a look at the position that you filled, how many other women have been in that position in BC's history?
In terms of chief judge of a court, there had been two, I think, provincial court chief judges who were women before me, Manitoba and Quebec.
But not in BC?
Not, well, BC, Madam Justice McLaughlin, she was a prof of ours, but she was chief before I was in this province of the Supreme Court. And then she got elevated to the Court of Appeal and, of course, went on to the Supreme Court of Canada. And she's a huge role model for women in this country.
Yes, she is. But she's had to make all of those choices herself.
Yeah.
Which are challenging, as you pointed out.
Well, I remember as a woman thinking when she got appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada and her son was fairly young at the time, I thought, that has got to be such a hard decision to make. To say, we're uprooting, we're out there, and I'm going to be very, very busy for the next, how many years now? 20? I don't know. She's been there for quite some time.
There's no doubt that when women fill those very important leadership roles, organizations, our society, the world we live in is better. How is it that the contribution of women changes the dynamic of an organization and makes it better?
Well, it's interesting because I still have people coming to me and saying they really liked my management style as a chief judge, which is now 10 years past, right?
Yeah.
And it was, I didn't make a decision without consulting with the court. If I could, we had the luxury of email by then, so I sent it out and say, look, we've got to decide as a court what we're going to do. You give me your input, and so I got a reputation as a collaborator, consensus builder, that kind of thing, and people felt heard. And that was really important to them, really, because they hadn't experienced that kind of leadership style before. It was more of a top-down thing, and I won't say male-female, but that was the way I decided it was good to do. Partly because I needed help, right? I recognized the fact that I didn't have those strengths, and my view was you don't respond by making a decision if you're not entirely sure of where you're going or where you should be going. So one of the first things I got asked when I was appointed was, what's your strategic plan? I'm going, what? I came in with a strategic plan? I didn't. I came in because I thought I could do the job, and it was intriguing to me, but I hadn't come in with a plan. What we did was we did a consultative process for 1.5 years where we found out what the judges thought the plan should be.
Is Susan Colantuno correct when she says, no matter what profession you're in, you have to have business acumen, you have to have strategic acumen, you have to have financial acumen if you want to make it to the top and succeed?
It was my experience that was important. And if you didn't have it when you came in, you needed to develop it and you needed to be smart about it. And so, I can't imagine a business where that wouldn't be important for you to excel into an upper position.
If you were talking to a young woman today who is considering a career in law and wants to be partner, based on your experience, what would you tell her are the things that she needs to consider so that she has choices? It's not that you have to get to the top, but she can decide on her own whether she wants that or not. Not that it's imposed upon her.
It would be not necessarily to have to take a business degree or learn those things, because those are also sometimes academic. I think when you get into the firm, you need to take an interest in the way it's run and its management and its structure and their strategic plan and show yourself to be interested in the overall picture. And again, also, you just have to always demonstrate that you're prepared to do the work.
As you look at the current landscape, are you confident that we're going to see improvement in opportunities for women, or are you concerned that we're maybe going in the wrong direction?
Well, without getting political, I think after the next election,
Yes.
I'm really hopeful that things will be looking up for us and that we'll start to gain our place where we were in terms of encouraging women and having programs in place that do encourage and assist and support them in their decisions, whatever it is they choose to do.
Well, let's get a little bit political, because you have now decided to put your foot into the political arena, and now you're wanting to take a leadership role again to be an MP.
Yep.
Why is it important that you do that?
Well, you know, I've watched what's happening in the country for the last 10 years, and I'm, again, losing ground in terms of the gender gap and encouraging women, child care programs, support programs for families, legislation. You know, of course, justice system is one of my pet interests, and, you know, just watching the kinds of legislation that are coming out of the current government and thinking, I was sitting there thinking, someone needs to do something. And I thought, well, I'm at a stage in my career where I could actually run for office, and it's a bit foreign to see a judge do that after their career. It kind of sometimes goes the other way around. But for me, I had no excuses. And I'm watching my 5 now adult children look at what they see as quite a bleak outlook in their future for, you know, jobs, and are they going to be able to do that balancing thing? Are there going to be programs available for them for the child care, national child care sort of thing? So, yeah, I just thought I could help make a change, and I really think things seriously need to change.
Do you think that in the political arena that there is equal opportunity for women? We take a look at, there's a number of female premiers across the country, and there's a number of female politicians that are in prominent roles. But when you look at the balance between men and women, it's still heavily weighted in favor of men.
Well, and that's one of the good things. I've chosen the NDP because of all of the things that they stand for, that are all things that I would like to see happen or changed or made better. And first of all, they have a democratic nomination process, which is not the same as a number of the parties. So there is
so you really are getting political now.
Nomination, right? Okay, sorry. But they also have a policy of bringing along women and encouraging women to run and supporting them when they do that. So it's a no-brainer for me.
Well, I wish you all the best in your political career, and we'll watch you continue to ascend to higher heights. You've been a great role model for many people, I'm sure. So thanks you very much for coming in and doing this.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.